we got to $1 million in revenue, let's go raise funding. And then you realize, you were just so well connected and so passionate versus can you get strangers to come in and sell? The sooner the better to hire an external salesperson, albeit it could be expensive, but it's much more expensive to kind of have a fake product market fit than it is to actually prove out that you can have a stranger selling the product.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Kris, thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike.
So this, for our listeners, this is a two-part episode. So part one, Kris is going to talk about basically the journey and how we built the business and the journey of the founder and a scale-up. And then in part two, we're going to talk lots about the whole gifting industry as a very broad topic. So without further ado, Kris, who are you? What do you do? And what's your favorite place in the world that you visited and why?
Right. So I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Sendoso, or the world's leading gifting and direct mail automation platform. I started the company about 10 years ago, so this will be my 10th year, which is exciting. Before that, I spent about a decade in software sales myself, and I think we'll get into this journey, but while I was at my previous company, a company called TalkDesk in sales, I saw that email was becoming more spammy, and I wanted to find a better channel to engage with prospects. And so I was doing a lot of manual gifting and realized that it was painfully hard to operationalize. So I came up with the concept for Sendoso out of the pain I felt. Fast forward, raised about over 150 million in funding, thousands and thousands of customers, hundreds of millions in spend on our platform, and have had a fun time helping companies generate billions in pipeline.
And we're going to come back to all of that in a second. But first of all, your favorite place that you visited and why?
Yeah, so I love Bora Bora in French Polynesia. I've been there 5 times. It's my wife and I's one of our favorite places to go and just disconnect, relax, and just be on a private beach and just feel like, you can just look at the sand and relax. So for all of the hard work I do, it pays off when I'm sipping a drink on a beach in Bora Bora.
Yeah, sounds actually really perfect, Kris. Really perfect. So let's get into kind of part one. So part one, let's start with your background and where the idea for Sendoso originates.
Yeah, so I've always been kind of a growth hacker, marketing mindset kind of salesperson. So I started a company in college, sold that company, and then spent the next 8 years working at some other companies on the sales side of the house. But I'd always had that kind of engineer/marketer mindset where I wanted to do things that scaled. And so when probably 2014, I built a hacky mail merge product where I would export data from our CRM and then load them into a spreadsheet, mail merge, add some custom fields, reload it into CRM. And that was a huge competitive advantage for me because that was before mail merging and email sequencing was a thing. And so I was the volume guy. I could send 10 times more email than anyone else. So I was always the top rep. When ToutApp and SalesLoft and Outreach and Yesware came onto the scene and made it easy for anyone to just click a button and send 10 million email sequences, that advantage disappeared. And so I was looking for other advantages and other channels that I could use to stand out and book more meetings. And so that's where I started testing out writing handwritten notes and mailing it out, be on a call and hear a dog bark and follow up with a dog toy, or I'd go steal swag from our marketing closet. But all of it ended up me packing boxes till 8 p.m. at night, going to FedEx, clicking tracking links, doing expense reports. It worked so well, I kept doing it, but I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. And so that's where the epiphany of, hey, why isn't there a platform that makes it easy to do this at scale, integrated into your tech stack, outsourcing all the kitting, the packing, the shipping, and tracking. And so that's really what led me to scratching my own itch and solving the problem that I want. So I was customer number one.
Brilliant. And they always say that the best kind of businesses to start are those that start with a problem that you have and that you can work out how to solve.
Yeah.
How do you validate the business idea and scale Sendoso from startup to, let's say, its first kind of 5 million in sales? Because there's the 0 to 1 journey, then the 1 to 5 journey. Just explain how that kind of worked. And how did you know you're onto something?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things come to mind. One is, I was talking to customers and pre-selling access to the platform before we even launched. And I think that's a smart move for a founder because you can go and really quickly get early validation and early momentum, and you can go get revenue before or as you launch. And so that was critical, is just like not being scared to show a kind of a not ready product to a potential customer. So that was one thing I did very early, was just pre-sell the product.
But also, Kris, on that thing, on the pre-selling the product, people listening, me included probably, if I was listening in the car, would be going, yeah, okay, that sounds great, Kris, but how do you actually reach people? What do you do to build awareness and then interest and desire and then action? How do you get the awareness? How do you do the outreach? What did you do rather than,
That's a fair question. I think it came natural to me because I spent the decade prior in sales. So I built a target list of, the top 1,000 customers that I wanted to outreach to. Enrich, got their information, set up email sequences, started gifting them from the start manually before a product was ready, cold calling, inviting to events. So kind of your typical kind of sales development motion, or kind of, typical outbound motion. That is what I did.
This was 10 years ago?
Yeah.
10 years ago, and it was outbound. Outbound then versus outbound now, very different.
Very different, yes.
What kind of cut-through rates were you getting back in the day 10 years ago?
Yeah, I was getting like response rates north of 50%. People were...
Whoa, 50%?
Now, I think it goes to the fact that, email outreach back then and other cold outreaches were a bit more receptive. And I had a problem that was obvious that people wanted to solve too, given, a decade later and our hundreds of millions in spent on our platform. So I think it was a perfect combination of product market fit mixed with my background on how to drive sales. So I think that really helped me get off the ground fast.
And so the lesson there, I think, for anyone that's listening is, and I suffer from the same problem, is that you may well have a problem that people need solving. But unless you can get out there and you can engage with your target ICP and start having conversations, it all means absolutely nothing.
Exactly, 100%. And I think some founders try to perfect their product too long. And I say the best time to go talk to a potential customer is yesterday. So I think that's
exactly
the first thing.
I would agree.
One channel that I think works even better today, or works still strong today, is events and in person. And so I think, again, as a founder, you might be worried, I don't want to go spend a couple $1,000s on a dinner, or I don't want to go spend $20,000 on a booth. But I'd say it's well worth it because you can go talk to somebody face to face. You can befriend them. And especially in the early years, you need those kind of bestie customers because they're going to be your references. They're going to be potentially your references for funding and fundraising. And what better way to meet them in person and showing that personal connection and sharing that. So I think going out, going to events or hosting a dinner is super strategic these days. The other thing that I quickly wanted to do is validate that what I was seeing in terms of pipeline and customer onboarding and success wasn't just founder-led sales success and the passion that I had for the product. And so I wanted to quickly hire 2 SDRs and 2 AEs. Those were really early hires for us to go validate to see if a stranger could go and build their own pipeline and sell the product. And I think that some founders stay in founder-led sales for a really long time, and you can have some false positives in terms of, we have perfect product market fit. We got to $1 million in revenue. Let's go raise funding. And then you realize, you were just so well connected and so passionate that you as a founder versus can you get strangers to come in and sell? So I think the sooner the better to hire an external salesperson, albeit it could be expensive, but it's much more expensive to kind of have a fake product market fit than it is to actually prove out that you can have a stranger selling the product.
And let's just be very specific, Kris, around salesperson. Because I talked to a lot of salespeople about exactly this, and a lot of CEOs as well, is I always think of salespeople as being, right, so you've got the upfront lead generation or contact generation, and then you've got the selling cycle, and then you've got the negotiation bit at the end. What I know about, I would say if you picked 100 salespeople, I would say in today's market, in B2B selling, see if this resonates, I think well over 75% would be very poor at lead gen. But they might be very good at managing the sales cycle and getting to close.
Yeah.
We'll forget the negotiation for a second. That skill of generating leads, that's why SDRs were born, wasn't it?
Yes.
SDRs emerged because salespeople were crap at generating net new leads. Whereas an SDR could go, I've booked you a meeting, then the salesperson can take over. What's your view on, if you go back in the day, what model did you decide on?
Yeah, well, I mean, for those first sellers, we wanted them to be full cycle and being able to do the whole gambit. And I think that just comes to recruiting and understanding what type of person you're looking to hire for. Because I think you can hire for those rock star closers that don't know how to prospect at all. Typically, those are coming from much larger companies. They're later in their careers. Maybe they're senior enterprise reps. Maybe they're working in IT and other industries that have much more sophisticated programs. Or you can hire, what I did was someone who had been recently promoted out of an SDR role into a seller role, which means they had a few years of sales development history more recently, which means it's still top of mind for them, and bet on the younger, hungrier person. Now they probably have less experience closing 5, 6, 7-figure deals, but you're betting that they have more of a full cycle background or they can book their own meetings. And I think that's helpful in the early days. And those people can grow with you. One of our best sellers ever, I worked with him at my previous company. He was an SDR building leads for me. And then that materialized into him being first AE and then sales leader through the company for many years.
Yep, exactly. So those are kind of the first couple of things that you learned. What else did you learn about kind of getting to that first 5 million? Because as you say, founder-led sales will get you so far, often to that million, which is why we know a lot of companies cap out at $1 million because the founder's still selling. What did you learn about going maybe from the 1 to 5? So you brought in an AE, you brought in lead gen skills in people as well as kind of closing skills. And that gets you so far. But presumably at that point, you can't just pour more fuel on the fire because you've got a whole engine to build of fulfillment and customer excellence and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And for listeners, so we went from about 0 to about $1 million in our first year and then $1 million to like almost 5 million in our second year. So we had that big jump there.
$1 million to 5 million in your second year.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so that was a mixture of us pouring fuel on the fire. And we had raised a couple $1 million at that point. So we were able to hire ahead of schedule. We also invested a lot in our B2B marketing engine. So content was really huge for us. We were sharing a lot of case studies on why gifting and direct mail works. We were showing data reports on the conversion and efficacy of the channel. We made a lot of strategic partnerships with other sales tech and MarTech players.
Dig into that a second. So just kind of pick into partnerships and tech. Well, first of all, why did you happen upon that's obviously a great way to scale? And then how did you pick the right partners and how did you nurture those relationships? Because my fear is it's the kind of like the gin and tonic and pizza brigade. You know, everyone has a nice time. You get together once a month. We all talk sales. Everyone goes off. No one sold anything for you.
Yeah.
How do you solve that problem?
So one of the critical things for us was how do we add value to our customers where 1 + 1 = 10 with these partner integrations? So I think for us, we've seen different types of partnerships work. There's the agency partnerships. And we went down that path a little later, closer to 10, 20 million in revenue. But we started with our tech partner integrations like day one. These were with companies like Marketo, HubSpot, SalesLoft, Outreach, Engagio, Salesforce. And so what we purposely did is we looked not for the Salesforce first. While we did have an integration, we were just so much of a small fry for them. But we picked SalesLoft and Outreach, which we knew still had thousands of customers at the time. They had like a 5-year head start on us. So they were already in the tens of millions in revenue. We knew that their target audience and their buyers were our users. And so we made it easy to send gifting inside of sequences. And we went to their conferences, we sponsored, we spoke on stage, we educated on why you needed to, basically evangelize our solution. And then we also spent a fair amount of time and we hired an early partner development rep who would go meet with the AEs, the CSMs from a more of a bottoms up approach, educating not just a VP to VP of partnerships and saying, hey, good job, we're partners now, but going in and being like, hey, account manager at SalesLoft, here's why we win together. let me know if you have anybody that fits this type of need and would love to collaborate. And we did a lot of that. And that worked really well for us.
But I think also, if I'm right, check me if I'm not, you did a lot of smart things along the way, but that partnership thing around tech companies, integration points, if nothing else, you made them more sticky.
Yeah.
And exactly. I suspect you also helped them grow. With any partner relationship, if you can't help them achieve a business goal, they simply will not do anything. And you'll think of a partnership and you simply don't.
Yeah. 100%.
Is that what happened?
That's 100% what happened. And we were able to show results. We were able to tell the Better Together story. We were able to create content together that lived on and created evergreen lead gen programs for us. So it was a win-win-win.
Yeah. So partnerships are great, but you've got to, as I've always said, you've got to put bread on their table in order for them to wake up. If they're bigger than you and you need them, then you've got to prove that you can help them do something in their business.
Exactly. We're also willing to sponsor their conferences that they were hosting for user conferences. So we showed up not just with, a value-added tech integration, but also with money and saying, hey, we're here for the long term and we want to invest and we want to sponsor your events too. So that really helped out.
Perfect. Now let's move on to, so you're at 5 million.
Yeah.
So you're at 5 million of revenue and it's probably a little bit scrappy, but less scrappy than it was on the 0 to 1 million stage. We'll come to the fundraising next, but to get from 5 million to the next stage, 10 or 20 million, what did that feel like and what did you have to change in terms of mindsets, in terms of the way that you thought about scaling, in terms about systems and processes and infrastructure? What happened then, Kris?
Yeah, that's when we really started to figure out how do we create systems and processes to create more repeatable success? How do we create a training program so we can hire more SDRs and more A's and get them in and get them ramped and get them selling? How do we hire more field marketers so we can go to more events? How do we continue to build out the organization? So it was a heavy hiring time for us. We had also started the company in San Francisco and realized at the time that San Francisco was going to get expensive for certain types of roles like SDRs, support. So we opened up another office in Phoenix, Arizona. And so that was part of our strategy, was to continue to expand in another region. This was pre-COVID. And so having a second place to hire from was critical for us because we could say, hey, we could either hire you in San Francisco or in Phoenix. So it gave us like 2 pools of talent to hire from. And that was really helpful. We also had to really at that time build out our customer community. And that was methodical in terms of how do we find what we call super senders, who are power users and champions that want to evangelize and advocate for us to their peers, who can give us critical product feedback as we want to build and iterate on the future vision of our platform. And so we built a customer community, hired a customer marketer. That was a really important role, and just started to put the pieces together for, the next stage of growth. And at that stage, it was raising money every year, trying to double or triple the business, and then just trying to, more aggressively hire ahead of schedule so that we could meet the demands of the next year, knowing that hiring is almost a lagging effort where we need to make sure it takes a handful of months to get someone ramped and ready in their role.
So we're going to segue into the funding and then we're going to end part 1. The segue for me is either you and your founders were incredibly smart, very knowledgeable, lots of wide business sense, and the 5 to 10 to 20 million scale up was without any support, or you found some advisors or some mentors or people that had been on the journey before. Which was it? Did you just do it all alone?
All above. So I think there's a bit of my my co-founder and I's hunger and tenacity to just go. So I think you need to have that founder initiative. There was a mixture of, we brought on talented executives and talented employees that had seen this before. So it was, helpful for us to hire somebody who's gone from 5 to 20 million and knew that journey. And so we could hire them to know that playbook. We also had a really strategic advisory group of people that were executives that have been there and done that before, that end up becoming personal friends and connections that I relying on for advice and connections. And then, our VCs and our board was also helpful in helping us see around the corner into the future.
So talking about the funding journey now, how many funding rounds have you had?
Maybe 5-ish. So we did I'd say personally funded for the first, call it 25,000, then did a friends and family 350,000, then did an official Series Seed for $2 million, a Series A for $12 million, a Series B for $40 million, a Series C for $100 million.
Wow. Okay. Just talk about how you got those investors on board. What have you done in that 5 round? Maybe forget the early stages, because you and then your friends and family, that's a bit different. But getting seed money in, which is normally from 1 or 2, maybe 3 early stage investors. But let's think about the Series A, B, and C. How does that work? How do you get them on the hook for very large sums of money?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different paths. There's the path of either A, you are an elite founder that came from an amazing company.
Exactly.
So that's one path. Like you just left OpenAI as the founding researcher, and you can get infinite funding.
You can probably raise infinite funding at that point.
Yeah. The second is you are a second, third time founder, and you've already proven your worth. And I think that's another way to do it as a repeat founder. And those founders often get money fast. I was neither.
You were neither. Exactly. I was going to say you were neither of those.
Yes. So I had to go the traction and proof. And so that's where the hustle and grit of my sales background paid off, because I was showing proof. I was showing millions and millions in revenue, tens of millions in revenue, hundreds of millions in revenue through that journey where one, investors were like, wow, this works. Your metrics speak for themselves. The business is doubling or tripling. The hockey stick growth is there. And so I was able to show one, the traction that we could build a repeatable, sales and marketing engine, customer success engine that worked. And then 2, I could paint a big picture on why this was going to be a Deca $100 billion plus category and the vision to get there. And I think those 2 things combined with, my personality and hunger were the kind of the recipe for an investor to say yes.
Interesting. And so on that Series A, B, and C, have you taken a lot of those investors with you on that journey? Or did some just kind of check out at Series A, new ones in Series B? How did that kind of work?
Yeah, no, it's pretty typical for investors to want to follow through with their pro rata for each round and continue to come along for the journey. So all my investors over the years have been super helpful in continuing to bet on the business, bet on the category, and help me be successful.
And can you say who those investors are?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, some of our early stage investors are like Struck Capital, Storm Ventures, Signia Ventures, Craft Ventures, Oak HCFT, SoftBank, and then a handful of angels as well. Felicis Ventures is another one I left out. But there's been a dozen plus big name venture capitalists, and then a handful of angels along the way too.
Brilliant. So I'm going to close part 1. So Kris, because some people will sadly miss part 2 for whatever reason, do you want to so how would you sum up part 1 in terms of people listening that are going on a journey? They've got past founder-led selling. They're looking at, how on earth am I going to scale? They've listened to this episode. What are your kind of 2 or 3 takeaways?
Yeah, 2 or 3 takeaways. One is start selling yesterday. So if you're building a product, go talk to a customer yesterday. Even if you're not even ready, go talk to a customer. That's number 1. 2 is build a network of advisors that can be helpful along this long journey. And then 3, I think, have fun with it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't burn yourself out. I'm in year 10 and I'm still having a blast. So make sure you take a trip to Bora Bora once in a while.
Brilliant. Kris, it's been amazing. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're curious about what Sendoso is, go to sendoso.com or shoot me an email. It's Kris, Kris, @sendoso.com.
Kris, it's been amazing. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.